"Sir, that watch looks fake. Business class is for real. Priority guests only." You ever hear a sentence that slices right through the quiet like a knife through silk? That was the moment, right there in the business cabin of Skylink's flight SL912, when time seemed to hiccup. Every eye flickered up. Frank Hallberg sat perfectly still, just this unassuming man in a plain gray blazer, canvas tote resting on his knee, and that old, unflashy watch glinting beneath the lights. Champagne flutes paused in midair, half a dozen conversations stumbled, and every passenger started wondering, who is this guy? And what just happened? The words came from Darla Keene, chief flight attendant, all navy blue sharpness and polished shoes, arms folded like she was guarding a vault. Her voice cool as the glass and her hand didn't waver, but you could feel the judgment curl around every syllable. That's the thing about these flights. Everyone claims it's the champagne and the privacy you pay for, but really it's the feeling that you belong, that you're seen, that you matter more than whoever's behind that curtain in economy. Frank didn't even blink. He just brushed a thumb over the vintage Pate Fipe on his wrist, a watch you wouldn't recognize unless you'd been somewhere, done something, known someone. That watch had history, a gift from the directors at Heathrow back in '87, a chapter of life and loyalty in every tick. But right now, to Darla and a row of finance execs, it might as well have been a cheap mall knockoff. He met her eyes, offered a gentle, neutral nod, not a word of anger, just this dignified silence that somehow weighed heavier than any outburst. "Thank you, ma'am. My ticket is confirmed for this seat." His voice had the softness of late-night, radio steady, deep, and so controlled it almost made you lean in. Darla glanced at her manifest, clearly hoping for a mistake, something she could hang her certainty on. Behind her, the whispers flared. He must have hacked his way in, muttered a guy in shiny glasses, while a stockbroker in a $2,000 suit flipped his tablet shut, suspicious and ready for drama. But Frank just stared out the window, letting New York's skyline blur past under the late afternoon light. For a moment, he slipped away, back to a day long ago. His wife, Claire, turned away from a VIP lounge because her shoes weren't shiny enough, her dress not expensive enough, her violin case tucked under her arm like a badge of humility. He'd watched her shrink under the attendant's sneer, felt helpless, angry, ashamed. That memory never left him. But Frank wasn't the same man anymore. This time, he wasn't just going to watch. Hidden inside his jacket, his fingers grazed a sleek metal access Cardone the rest of the cabin didn't know existed. 10 minutes earlier, he'd quietly triggered a freeze order to his company's HQ. Hallberg Infrastructure Group, his company, was about to suspend all business lounge contracts at JFK for an ethics breach. Let's just say the ripple was coming. The atmosphere in the cabin grew tight. Darla opened her mouth for another jab, but the chime of a new message pinged through the silence. Phones buzzed, and suddenly, every executive's eyes were glued to their screens. Frank leaned back, peaceful. In half a minute, the power in that cabin would shift. You know what I mean? In that instant, Frank's whole life replayed how he'd sold everything after Claire's humiliation, poured every dollar into building Hallberg Infrastructure Group, a company that would treat travelers with respect no matter how they dressed. 14 major airports worldwide, all under his watchful eye. Never once in the headlines, but always behind the contract clauses, making sure no one ever got shut out for being not the type. His reforms weren't noisy or public, but they had bite. Service agreements rewritten, fines for discrimination hidden in the legalese. Quiet, relentless change. Now, his conviction lived not in a raised voice, but in glass and steel terminals everywhere. A hush fell as Darla's confidence wavered, her smile slipping into uncertainty. She glided down the aisle, past executives basking in luxury, laughing behind tall glasses. Frank sat alone, unnoticed by most except for the one empty seat beside him, a little bubble of quiet in a row of privilege. Whispers followed in her wake. Who is he, anyway? That watch is a fake, right? But Frank let them talk. He knew silence is sometimes just another kind of cruelty, the kind that says, "You're invisible. You don't count." He thought of Claire's face, The years he'd spent writing dignity clauses into contracts, no headlines. Just real protection, real power. As Darla returned, tablet in hand, pretending to ignore him, Frank reached for his secure access card. The real twist? That card, in just a few minutes, would ice every JFK lounge contract, a domino about to tip. Before she could say another word, a soft ping cut through the hum 11 rows back. Phones lit up. Champagne paused midair. The hush was deafening. Frank folded his hands, closed his eyes, and let the moment roll in. 10 minutes until takeoff. 10 minutes until everything changed for good. He slipped his phone from his pocket, unlocked it with a thumbprint. In the world's eyes, he was just another gray-haired traveler. But tonight, with a single message freeze, Skylink's SL 912 business lounge contract. Ethics breach. Execute immediately was about to turn the whole game upside down. No drama, no shouting, just a single order sent with surgical precision. The mood in the cabin barely shifted at first. Darla poured drinks, executives toasted, but under the surface you could feel the current, a pulse of something big on the way. Frank leaned back, his satisfaction as cool and precise as the code that locked those doors. If the world wouldn't enforce respect, he would. And then the tremors. In the JFK ballroom, Skylink CEO Jonathan Cole was in the middle of a triumphant speech about a $2.2 billion merger. Studio lights flashing, reporters jostling for the best shot. A sharp ping on his tablet. Hallberg, contract frozen, ethics audit incoming, all funding suspended. Cole's words died in his throat. The screen flickered. Stock tickers in the back turned red. He tried to keep talking, but his voice broke. The merger was over just like that. Back on board, Frank's calm never cracked. Attendants traded nervous glances. Some passengers checked breaking news on their phones. A ripple became a wave. Hallberg infrastructure freezes JFK business lounges. Merger canceled. Stocks down 12%. Darla's clipboard hung forgotten as she stared at the screen, her earlier certainty erased by the camera's close-up on Frank's watch. "That's him," someone whispered. Executives scrambled to check their investments. The mood turned from mockery to awe to a little bit of fear. But Frank didn't gloat. He watched, steady as ever, a quiet pillar while the world outside scrambled to react. Power, it turns out, doesn't need a spotlight, just needs the right moment. Then came the unexpected twist. Skylink's PR director, Melissa Graves, walked down the aisle, her stride deliberate but her hands trembling. "Mr. Hallberg, on behalf of Skylinks, I deeply apologize for the misunderstanding, for any offense you've experienced. We value every guest." The whole cabin fell silent, every word weighed and measured. Frank nodded, voice low but cutting through the quiet. "Thank you, MS. Graves. But I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for respect." The air thickened, everyone listening now not just to the words but to what they meant. Too many people are judged for what they wear, what they carry, where they come from. I won't be another silent victim. Issues action. Behind Melissa, Darla stood pale, arms tight around her clipboard, finally realizing the price of one careless insult. Melissa straightened, promising policy reviews, her voice stronger now. Frank offered a thin smile. "I believe you will, because if you don't, justice will ask again, and next time you might not get a second chance." The aftermath rolled in fast. Cabin lights flickered, a new announcement from the intercom. Darla Keene suspended pending investigation for discriminatory conduct, effective immediately. A collective gasp. The executives lowered their champagne. Darla staggered, grabbing the counter for support, a single tear slipping down as she realized it was over not just for her, but for the old way of doing things. Frank didn't celebrate. He simply nodded. Justice had finally caught up. A wave of relief settled over the cabin. Smiles of solidarity exchanged in the aisle. Passengers who'd kept silent before now found themselves part of something bigger. Headlines crawled across screens. Hallberg Capital withdraws. Merger canceled. Respect is the new standard. Wall Street blinked, boardrooms buzzed, and across the world, new contracts were being rewritten. Zero tolerance for discrimination. Respect is non-negotiable. The industry would never be the same. Frank stood at a press conference days later, a banner above him, future of air travel, ethics, and infrastructure. Reporters grilled him, did he regret ending Skylinks? He answered with a quiet strength, I regret that prejudice went unnoticed. I do not regret exposing it. Respect is not negotiable. That's how it happens, you know? Not with a bang, but with a steady insistency, a single signature, a single clause, a refusal to look away. A week later, airports everywhere enforced new dignity standards. Training videos looped. We serve people, not profiles. Cafe owners cheered. Executives scrambled. Families found themselves welcomed where once they'd been turned away. Frank, now just a man with his dog on a riverside walk, felt the sunset on his face and thought of Claire. Her dignity, her violin, her quiet strength. This, he knew, was for her and for everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong. Aboard his next flight, a small boy leaned over, curious. Sir, your watch looks old. Is it broken? Frank smiled, showed the gleaming face. It works just fine, but you should ask why someone would insult a watch they don't understand. Around them, heads turned, the lesson soaking in. A single act of respect or the lack of it can change everything. Remember that. As the plane lifted into the dusk, Frank knew the message would outlast him. Not in gold or gears, but in the way people chose to see one another every single day. Did Frank's story make you feel something? Drop a comment. Was he right to act? Or should he have stayed silent? Where do you draw the line between standing up and letting things slide? Let's talk about it. Because respect, well, that's a right, not a privilege.